I've been speaking on the topic of creativity. I do it in an inspirational way, or motivational way, but I don't look at myself as an inspirational or motivational speaker. I look at myself as a creativity speaker, and then I get, because you inspire people to want to be creative. That's what I do.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, say we know where Canada is in the British Columbia on the west coast, right? Right. And then then there is a big city that is Vancouver. And where are you, John, in regards to Vancouver? Well, we are 500 miles north, or for our European friends, 800 kilometers of Vancouver, and that puts us in the center of British Columbia, north, south, east, west. And Prince George, very, very interesting community. It's about 80,000 people. We have lots of forest around us. Within 50 miles, we have close to 100 lakes, and we have lots of friends: black bears, grizzly bears, caribou, deer, foxes, wolves, and you name it, we have them all, and we call it paradise. Today we have a very, very interesting guest. His name is Fredrik Haren. Did I say that correct? Haren?
Yeah, yes.
And Haren is a global speaker who has delivered over 2,000 presentations across 75 and more countries. Fredrik has spent his career exploring creativity, innovation, and the power of ideas. Fredrik has inspired over 1 million people from the States, best-selling book, The Idea Book. And he will be talking about that. That's a copy of it. He has it probably with him there, and he's going to show it to us, talk about it. Fredrik, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. And I noticed you have a Swedish dollar horse in behind you.
I do.
Very nice.
Yeah,
very nice.
Saw it, and I'm proud of that. Let's just show it to our friends. I love Sweden. I was born in Holland, spent time in Sweden, and still have lots of friends. This is made from wood in Sweden, and is very, very well known, as Fredrik picked it up right away.
I'm born in Dalarna. I'm born in that region of Sweden that they make those horses.
Amazing. So, Fredrik, tell us about your background. And you already indicated you are in Sweden. You were born in Sweden. Tell us about where you were born, close to the place where they obviously make the horses. And then tell us about your education, your background, and then becoming an author, and then a speaker, a global level speaker, really motivational speaker, I believe. And one of my favorite topics, I'm also a presenter and a speaker, and then obviously I'm also an author as well, and we have lots of things to talk about between myself and Fredrik. So tell us all about you in the beginning, Fredrik.
Okay, I will. But I think I will start at the end.
Okay.
So right now, I define myself as the creativity explorer. And what does it mean? It means I travel around the world to interview creative people to learn about how they develop their own creative capabilities. And then I share what I've learned. So I do this because I want people to become more creative. So that's what I do now. How did I end up here? Well, I was born in a family in Sweden where creativity was very important. Like, my father was a music teacher, but both my parents were teachers. My father was a music teacher, but he was also a musician. He was an extremely creative music teacher and a musician. And I learned very early on that creativity is very important, and it makes your life more fun and more beautiful. But at the same time, I learned that I wasn't very good at it because I wasn't musical. So my brother had perfect pitch. He could play any instrument. I could not do that. So for many years, I thought creativity is very important, but I don't know how to do it. It took until I was like 30 years old when I realized that, okay, maybe I don't have to be creative in music. There's other ways I can be creative. I started an internet company and was part of the whole dot-com boom. And then in 2000, I sold the company and I said, okay, what do I want to do next? And I said, I want to study creativity. So for the last 25 years, that's what I've been doing. I travel around the world and I learn about creativity. As you said, 76, 75 countries. I go to between 15 and 35 countries per year. And I interview all kinds of people, artists, chefs, entrepreneurs, all kinds of people. And I want to understand how do they develop their creativity. That's what I do for a living.
So let's talk about Sweden a little bit for the people that watching us from around the world. Sweden is in Western Europe and next to Norway and Finland, and a beautiful, beautiful country, very similar to British Columbia, Canada, actually. Another similarity is there is lots of forest and a major forest industry in Sweden. The capital is Stockholm, and it's a beautiful, beautiful country. A lot of, how many people live in Sweden approximately? 20,
But
30,
a little bit more than 10, a little bit more than 10 million.
10 million people, and so, and it's a member of the European Union of countries. So amazing history, and to put that in context is that for me, I was born in Holland in 1940, and I'm nearly 85 years young, I say. And so I grew up during the Second World War. My grandfather was a master carpenter. My dad was in lumber manufacturing, and he worked for the largest lumber importer of Holland in Western Europe. And we bought a lot of wood in Sweden, and I spent time there a number of times, a couple of weeks at a time. So I started to appreciate Sweden, the country, the people, an amazing, amazing country, and the forest industry. And so one of the dreams for me was we were, during the Second World War, we were liberated by the Canadian Army. And April the 12th, 1945, it made such an impression on me as a 5-year-old that I knew from that point forward, when I grew up, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And so that was the one dream. And the other dream I had, when I go to Canada, I would go to British Columbia and I would build my own lumber mill, and I did that as well. And so lumber is very much part of me. Sweden has always been a part of me still now. I have still friends in Sweden and around Europe, and so it's always a very, very important part of my life.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, I think Sweden and Canada, and also Sweden and Holland, is very, very well similar, same mindset, same kind of um, worldview.
It is, so and then obviously there are lots of challenges around the world right now, but again, thinking in particular, I appreciate it so much living in North America now, or in Canada, is that have grown up during the Second World War, saw far too much that I should not have seen, and too many challenges still are affected by PTSD as a result of those things. And then, the looking now at Europe in particular, especially the Eastern Europe, looking at the Ukraine and then the Middle East and all the things that are war. A lot of people respectfully think that once there is a war, once the war is over, everything goes back to normal. It doesn't. Appreciate peace and tranquility, because it may take generations before the results of war goes through the families and others like myself that still, even now, nearly 80 years later, at nearly 85, I still remember it's still very much part of my life. So to appreciate
Yeah.
that is very important. And then democratic rule is very important. Like what we see in Europe, the European Union, and hopefully things will return to a sense of tranquility, especially with the Ukraine, and then obviously dictatorships like Russia, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, China to a certain extent. I appreciate, and we do appreciate democratic rule.
Yes, as a Swede, we have, as you know, we were not in the world wars. We have been it's hundreds of years ago since we were part of any war, and that makes I think Swedes a bit of a, yeah, it's quite unique for a country to not have been in war for that long.
Exactly, and so the other part, the as we both know, you've been a presenter, you've been gone through numerous of countries to interview people as to what motivates them, but in all those things, and doing presentations.
Mm.
Now, being a presenter, there is a lot of anxiety among people that, including myself initially, not so much now, but when I first started, I feared, had a fear of interaction, especially when I came in 1965 to Canada. Couldn't speak the language, didn't know soul, didn't have a job, didn't have much money, blah, blah, blah. And then it took quite a while to learn to speak English, especially
Mm.
growing up in Holland, where, as you know, Holland, smaller country, and about the 18 million people in that area, and then the northeastern part of Holland, we spoke dialect, and so it took time for me to learn to speak High Dutch, and then I barely got that under control. Then I go to Canada and start to have to learn to speak English, and so I had this fear of interacting to a certain extent. Even when I built companies, I had lots of people where I could interact with about 3 or 4 of them at a time, but not with groups. And what changed my life is then, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, or maybe not so much in Sweden, but through a coincidence in the late 1980s, nearly 1990, an ex-sister-in-law of mine said to me, "Why don't you come with me to Toastmasters?"
Mm.
And I'm sure by your reaction, I can see you're familiar with it, because Toastmasters is an organization that focuses on public speaking not only, but being, creating the ability to become good listeners and speaking on your feet. And so I did that, and I stayed there for 10 years. And again, for the people watching us, probably around the world, Toastmasters has been around for 40, 50 years already. There are groups, in particular in North America, where every community has several, in some cases, Toastmaster clubs, where they focus on communication skills, and in particular, not only speaking, but first and foremost, becoming good listeners, and then speaking on your feet, and then and then obviously making or creating presentations. That served me well. I became a distinguished Toastmaster, which is the highest level in Toastmasters, and it changed my life. And
Mm.
but still, there is always, even for me, and I presume with any of speakers that I know that do it even professionally, there is always a sense of getting to know your people that are watching. Who are they? What do they want to know? And there is always a little bit of a sense of anxiety, at least with me, when I do presentations, until I get into it, and then I'm fine. But it is one of the most challenging parts to do, to become a good presenter, especially in your case as a speaker on the global level that has done this for nearly 2,000 presentations in different countries. Give me your experience of that, of how did you get there? How did you start becoming an international level presenter? And especially, in what languages do you do it mainly? Like me, my native tongue is Dutch, but all my presentations are virtually done in English.
Yeah, same for me. I am Swedish. My native language is Swedish, and I give my talks in English. I don't actually do not. I've been living outside of Sweden since 2005. So for 20 years, I lived in China. I lived in Singapore, and then a couple of years ago, I moved back to Sweden. So, and I became a global speaker. I became a speaker 30 years ago. I became a global speaker 20 years ago, and that's when I moved to China. And I actually think it's a big advantage to not be a native English speaker, primarily because when you're not a native English speaker, you use a simpler vocabulary. And if you speak around the world, most people are not native English speakers. So if someone comes from Scotland and speaks in Scottish, it's not a problem with the dialects, it's a problem with the vocabulary. They use so many different difficult words that a lot of people actually don't understand what the message is. I use very simple vocabulary and the message goes through to everyone in the audience. So I don't look at that as a disadvantage. I look at that as an advantage. And I'm proud of my Swedish dialect. I'm not going to try to get that away. And yes, when I go up on stage, I am nervous. After doing 2,000, I've spoken for over 1 million people. I'm still nervous when I go up, and I tell people this. The times I have not been nervous is when I do a bad speech, because if you're not nervous, it means you don't care how the speech goes. And if you don't care how the speech goes, you are not invested. It's not important for you. So this a little bit of anxiety is good. Sometimes I have a trick because I've done so many speeches. I will go up and change the PowerPoint slides 5 minutes before I go up on stage. I will delete one slide or something like that, so that I'm not really 100% sure in which order they come, to make myself nervous.
I like it. So the other part is that a particular direction you do give presentations in particular? Is it motivational? What would you class, or are people inviting you to speak on particular topics?
No, my topic is creativity. For the last 25 years, I've been speaking on the topic of creativity. I do it in an inspirational way, or motivational way, but I don't look at myself as an inspirational or motivational speaker. I look at myself as a creativity speaker, and then I get, because you inspire people to want to be creative. That's what I do.
So explaining that to us, and you nearly did. How do you stimulate people to be creative? So
Yes.
so the guests that you're looking at usually that come to you as a creative speaker, what would they be looking for? Would they be people, younger people, or is the age group right across all the different age levels, male, female? Is it about saying how to become creative, or for those that are creative to put it into motion and start doing something, following their inspiration, if you wish, to becoming creative?
Yeah, I like to quote my father. So my father was, as I said, a music teacher,
Right.
and parents would come to him and say, "How do I turn my child into a musician?" And my father would say, "Well, you can teach anyone to play an instrument. You put your fingers like this and you blow here, and out comes music. But the only way to make someone a musician is through inspiration. You play the musical greats. You played Frank Sinatra, Fred Astaire, Michael Jackson, Mozart. You introduce them to really, really good music, and if they suck it up like a sponge, then they become students of music, and then that's how you become a musician." And I think this is true not only for music; it's true for any kind of creative people are inspired by other creative people. So if you want people to become more creative, you need to inspire them to want to be more creative. And you can do that while teaching them how to do it. But if you just teach them the techniques, like the equivalent of putting the fingers where they are, they're not going to be creative. No truly creative person will sit and do creativity exercises. They just don't do it. But they will study. They will get absorb themselves in things that inspire them. So I think if you want to teach someone to become more creative, you need to inspire them to want to become more creative. And then if they are inspired, you can give them the tools.
So the key to, for those people that want to send a message or want to become a presenter or speaker, what should be the foundation of that, other than to create a sense of self-confidence that you still will have anxiety, but to have a message that will make you meaning you in a general sense, attractive to an audience on issues that are important to
There are
them?
there are two things there. There are two things there. That how to be attractive on the content is you have to be an expert. An expert when it comes to speaking means you know more than the audience. So as long you can be an amateur. For example, if you do classes on, let's say, public speaking, but the people have never done public speaking, you actually don't have to be a professional speaker to give lessons on this. Just like you can teach someone to play a guitar, even if you don't have to be a guitar expert, you just need to be better than the audience. And this is true. But when it comes to the message, I like to explain to people that they need to find, if they truly want to become speakers, they need to find what I call their inner theme. And the inner theme, I describe it as a universal message that everyone needs to hear. Every human being on the planet needs to hear this message, but only you can deliver it. And when you find that inner theme, then that's, it kind of resonates. You found that resonance within you and say, I am the only person who can give this message to everyone who needs, and everyone needs to hear this message. It's a universal message, but it's unique to you. If you find that sweet spot, you have a very good message. In my case, my inner theme is humanity to the power of ideas. It doesn't mean anything to you, but it means a lot to me. It means I believe in the potential of human creativity, and I believe if everyone could reach their full creative potential, the world would be a much better place. It still doesn't mean anything to you, but it means everything to me. And that's why I travel around the world as much as I do, interview thousands of people, go to 20, 30 countries every year, and then speak in so many different countries, and Bangladesh and Switzerland, Canada and India, because I want to understand all of humanity. That's why that not everyone who studies creativity does it on a global level, but that's what I do. That resonates with me. And then the message I'm sending out is about human creativity. Like, I want to understand humanity through creativity. I want to understand creativity through humanity. And this is the message that I can, and because I've been traveling so much, I can do that better than anyone else.
So, and then, so you started that idea already 25 years ago or 20 years ago.
20 years ago, I left Sweden and said, I'm not, why am I only doing this in Sweden? It's a very limited mindset. I need to get a global mindset. And I moved to China for 3 years, and then I moved to Singapore, and that's where I spent the last 17 years, because Singapore is a global place. It's the most global city in the world. It's the capital. It's the global capital of the world.
Amazing place. I've not been there, but I hear an
Yeah, it
amazing
is
place.
truly amazing. It is amazing because there's no country around it. So New York is a global place, London is a global place, but New York has America around it. So all they talk about is what happens in America. London is a global place, but all they talk about is Brexit when that was happening. But Singapore doesn't have a country around it. It's just a global city in Asia, in the world. So there's a layer there that in most other global cities, there's a country layer outside of it that limits the ability to have a global mindset. That's why I love Singapore for that.
So when you traveled for 17 years from Singapore to those other locations, how did
Right.
that work, Fredrik? I'm thinking from a practical perspective. Do you have act as your own agent, or you have an agent that invite you to certain locations to speak to certain groups? How do you bring that all together?
Well, now I've been doing it for so long, so now it's a self-playing piano. Someone hears me speak. Someone hears me speak somewhere and says, "Wow, that was great. We should invite him to our company," and then they do that. I do work with agents and speaker bureaus, but I get maybe 20% from them, and the rest I get straight. Someone contacts me, and they just book me for a speech. Last week I was in Edinburgh. Edinburgh because I was speaking to accountants, and I got that speech because another accountant at a different accounting firm had booked me, and they speak between themselves, and they said, "We have this great speaker. You should have this great speaker." That's how this industry works. It's not a complicated industry.
Right. And so then the idea book that you wrote, I like what you did with the book. Actually, it's black, and then it catches the eye, right?
Yes.
So
It's
when did you get the
hmm.
idea in saying that I should also become an author?
Well, actually, I wrote my first book in 1995. The first two books I wrote they were about the internet. But in 2000, I said I don't want to write about the internet anymore. In the beginning, it was fun because it was new. But now in 2000, everyone knew about the internet, and I said, I don't want to write about the internet. I want to write about what's new. I want to write about new things. So that's when I started writing about creativity, and now, I think I've written 11 books, and most of them are about creativity, and some are one is a non-fiction book. Most books are about creativity, and the next book that comes out, it's called The World of Creativity, and it's about what I learned about creativity from different countries. Like what did I learn about creativity from Thailand, from Mongolia, even from North Korea.
So have you got copies of the book laying around you that you would like to share with us? I know the idea book is already a bestseller globally, has done very, very well in different
Yes, it has
languages, I
done very
presume.
well. I think it's 17 languages, 250,000 copies sold, which is not bad for a self-published book.
Right.
But now, actually, a couple of months ago, the warehouse where I had all the books burned up.
Oh
So,
no.
and I decided, it burned up. So all the books burned up, and I took it as a sign. So now, if you're, I'm not, if you can get a hand, if you can get a hand on the idea book, you're very lucky because it's most likely out of stock. And I said that's a sign. I should not sell more copies of this book. I should sell the new book now, the one that comes out later this year. And I like the symbolism of that. You should move on to new ideas.
So, and what will be the title of the new book? It's not out
The
yet,
world
right?
of no, it comes out before Christmas. It's called The World of Creativity.
Okay. So, and so if you look now at the idea book or the books that you're doing, is there a substantial difference between the concept of creativity in different countries as to that surprised you maybe even? Is saying that,
Yes,
I gave a presentation there, and what surprised me is what?
yes, and that's. Yeah, I need to explain though that it's not. I'm not arguing that everyone in a country A thinks creativity is like this, and everyone in country B thinks creativity like that. That would be silly. Just like food, not everyone in Japan eats sushi. Some of them eat hamburgers. But if we want to understand food, we have to understand sushi. We have to understand how the Japanese treat raw fish, and we should learn about sushi. That's how I look at it. So, for example, you were mentioning America, right? So, in America, everyone knows about the American creativity, which is shoot for the stars, go to the moon, moonshot ideas. Elon Musk is not an American, but he moved to America because he believed in that mindset. And not every American is like this, but that is American. Like this is what we can learn from the Americans when it comes to creativity. But in other countries, in other cultures, they look at creativity in a different way. And every chapter in the book is something I learned about creativity from going to that country and meeting creative people there. So just to put an example, the American way, Mark Zuckerberg, I think the quote is something like this: "Go fast and break things." Right. So that's what Facebook is all about. But I interviewed a woman in Afghanistan, she's a painter, and she talked about the total opposite, which is profound patience. So, but before she can paint anything, she has to make her own stuff. She has to cut the hair of a cat to make the brush. Then she has to cut down a tree to make her own paper. Then she has to grind the stones down and make her own paint. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks before she has made one piece of paper and a little bit of paint and a brush, and then finally she can start to paint. And she said, "You guys, you order it on Amazon. The next day you have all of it. You start painting right away. There's no time for you to think. Like you're just rushing." She says, "For weeks while I create this material, I am thinking what I'm going to paint, and when I finally start painting, it is never what I thought I was going to paint from the beginning." And that the value of slowing the creative process down doesn't mean Mark Zuckerberg is wrong. It just means you can either go fast and break things, or you can practice profound patience, and they are equally good creativity techniques.
Yes, and likely now for Zuckerberg, that started Facebook with a group of people at Harvard, I think 20 years ago, so something like that. It started from just interaction. But if I look back, that there is so much information available to us now in a general way through the internet or whatever. If I look back at Holland, northeastern Holland in particular, the city that I grew up in the region where my grandparents lived and their grandparents, all the way back, going back to that I can see is to 1600s, that it was that if somebody left that small circle area where all the family was, then even if it was about an hour away by car to another community, they said, "Oh my God, he's leaving, and we'll never see, oh my God." And so it was inconceivable. Like in my case, I left in 1965, but after the Second World War, a lot of people in Holland feared the Russians coming in, and they emigrated to North America, in particular United States and Canada, and never quite settled in a lot of ways. They still had one foot in the one country mentally and the other one in the other, never quite adjusted, but it was totally unimaginable, even for me in the 60s, going to the other side of the world, where you had to send faxes and telegrams and saying, "Hi, I'm all good, and I'm now in Prince George stop, and it's a big city stop, and I got a job, and I'm making $2 an hour," and was all excited about it. So now you pick up your iPhone, you push the button, and you speak directly. So the world has become much smaller from the culture that I grew up in.
But a lot of people are not taking advantage of that, unfortunately. That's the sad part. A lot of people are still living like those relatives you were talking about. They're still living in the same village. But I'm not going to say they do that wrong necessarily. But I think from a creativity point of view, I'm sure you experienced that too. When you leave your home country and you move to a different country, you become aware of a lot of things you took for granted. A lot of things you took as a truth turned out not to be truths. There were other ways of doing things in the world. And when you really realize this, you become much more open-minded to the fact that there are many different ways of doing things, and you become more creative.
So it probably goes to the question, what are the biggest misconceptions people have about creativity, and how can they overcome them?
There are many misconceptions. One misconception is that people think that there's one kind of creativity. Like they would say, "I am not creative," and they would say they think creativity is, I don't know, a painter or an advertising executive or something. but the truth, of course, is that first of all, everyone is creative, and second of all, there's many different kinds of creativity. Like I would, I don't know, someone who makes art with a chainsaw is creative, but so is a bus driver. If it's a good bus driver, he is also creative. And the trick, an engineer is very different. The creative process of an engineer is very different from the creative process of a writer. It doesn't mean they're not creative; they're just creative in different ways. It's kind of like saying, that the fish is jealous of the monkey because the monkey can climb a tree, right?
Right.
So the trick is to find what is your creative process. Just like my brother, who could play music and I couldn't, and I should not be worried about the fact that I'm never going to be a great musician. I should focus on what I am good at, which is writing, for example.
And
that's a huge and because people think there's only one creativity, if they define creativity as something that they are not good at, then they also define themselves as not being creative, which is very sad.
yeah, which creates the question that can you share a moment when you faced a creativity block and how to overcome it? Because it's very common for people that the creativity stimulus is no longer there, or somehow they have it, but then there is a certain amount of fear about creativity because it creates new challenges that needs to be overcome. So once somebody with a creativity mind is looking at opportunity, but then get a block, how did you get through that?
Okay, well, first of all, I think it's important to understand, when I interview a lot of creative people, they don't think necessarily like this. I was interviewing an advertising marketing person, and she described creativity. She described it as a path, like a river going, like a path. You're on your path to something, whatever that goal is. And if there's something in the way, a block, or in this case, let's say a stone, the creative person is not going to focus on the stone. The creative person is going to focus on the path, saying, okay, there's something blocking the path. How do I go around this block, and how do I continue on my path? So a lot of people do approach this wrong. They say, oh no, there's a block. Don't worry about that. That's not the point. The point is the path you're on. If you want, I can tell you a beautiful story that I like to tell about creative block that changed the way I look at it. And I learned this in Thailand. I met this origami artist. She makes paper flowers, beautiful paper flowers. Her name is Kai. And I was interviewing her, and I was asking her about, just like you did, how do you do if you have a creative block? And she said, I leave my studio and I go to Starbucks. And I said, okay, and I asked her, what's in your head then when you're in Starbucks? Are you like thinking of the problem, how to solve it? What's going on in your mind? She looked at me like she didn't understand the question. And she said, I think about what coffee I'm going to buy. And okay, fine. But then when you buy the coffee, then what do? I drink my coffee. And suddenly I became aware that she had no concept, no understanding of creative block. And she explained it to me. She explained this Thai concept of sabai. Are you familiar with sabai? It's a Thai concept. It's called sabai. It's kind of the philosophy of the Thai people. If you are in Thailand and you order a beer and you haven't gotten the beer in 20 minutes, and then you go to the bartender and you're angry and say, where the hell is my beer? The bartender will smile and say, sabai, don't worry, it will come. Don't worry about it. So it's very much like, don't worry, be happy approach to life. So when she has a block, she says to herself, sabai, don't worry, everything will be fine. And she goes and has a coffee. And she called this an idea nap, just like a power nap. So you're tired, you go to sleep, you have a power nap, you wake up and you continue your life. If you get stuck, you go and have an idea nap, you go drink coffee, you enjoy Starbucks, you go back and you continue to work. It's the same thing as a creative block, but without the anxiety. You do not have to have anxiety just because you are mentally blocked. You can just stop and have a break. And when I learned that from her, I don't have creative anxiety anymore. I just changed my mind. Whenever that happens, I just say sabai, and I go and play with my kids for a while, and then I go back and continue. It's a very liberating feeling.
Very interesting, and that applies virtually to everything, right? So
It
that if
applies to
you
life. Yes,
and that's the point, right? So that
that's the point.
you and me have things where we are similar, is that you became 20 years ago when you decided you had to change, leave Sweden with all the comforts and all the other things around you, and go to China, stay
Yeah,
there for 3 years, and then again made a move and went to Singapore.
yeah.
And saying those are major moves, because every time you go there, it's a new environment. There's a whole lot of things that are different. Everything that makes you feel comfortable, you're left behind, and you have to now recreate a feeling of stability, and then from there on start exploring and start creating a new life in a new environment with new ideas.
I agree with you, but I also disagree with you because I did not leave everything that was comfortable in Sweden. I had the total opposite approach. I said I'm going to bring everything that I find comfortable. I'm going to bring with myself, and I'm going to leave all the uncomfortable things in Sweden, and I'm going to redefine what it means to be me when I move to China. So I think moving a country it's such. I have a friend. He lives in Hong Kong. He comes from Mozambique. And he was a super introvert when he lived in Mozambique. Then he moved to Hong Kong and he said, no one here knows me. No one knows I'm an introvert. I'm going to stop being an introvert now. They don't need, no one knows I'm an introvert. And he just redefined himself. He's not an extrovert now, but he's just not as much of an introvert. He just changed himself. And that's an extreme example. But I really like the best thing I've ever done was to leave Sweden and move to China, and because it made me more comfortable with who I am, not less comfortable. Because I got to understand. I like to tell this story. When I lived in China, the first few weeks, I didn't know anyone. I had no friends. I had no business contact. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know the culture. I know nothing. Just like you. Uh, but I would go to a restaurant and I would order food, and they couldn't speak English. I couldn't speak Mandarin, so I had to point in the menu. I didn't know what I was ordering. I would point at 3 different dishes because I knew one of them I could not eat, but the other 2 I could eat. And then they served me the food, and they would give me a fork, a knife, a spoon, chopsticks, and a Chinese one of those porcelain spoons. They would give me all of this cutlery because couldn't talk to me. They couldn't ask me, how do you want to eat this? I didn't know how you're supposed to eat this dish, whatever I was eating. So for the first time in my life, I would look at food and I would go, I don't know how you're supposed to eat it. I have no recollection of how have I eaten this before. How do I want to eat what is in front of me? And, and it was such a liberating feeling. And I said, all of these things that I thought was true is not what I think. It was my culture who thought this for me, and I accepted it as a truth. And that suddenly I became free to realize to question not only how I eat this dish, but question everything and see what do I think is true here. Not what does everyone around me think is true. It's a liberating feeling.
Yeah, so the difference likely is, I agree with you. The When I left was under circumstances that were a challenge for me. Academic, first the Second World War saw far too much that we should not have seen. Was affected by PTSD. Then parent, my dad was drafted into the Dutch army. And the last time that they saw him was when they bombed Rotterdam in 1940. And for 5 years, we did not know if he was dead or alive. Then we went through the hunger period where Germany had cut off all the food to Holland, and a lot of vulnerable people died, older people or young kids. There was no food, and we would go as kids. The brother 2 years older than me, my sister 1 year older than me. Every morning we would go into the railroad yards with gunny sacks to find food and fuel to burn and in our little stove. And And the reason that we did as kids, the Germans would kick us one, but they wouldn't shoot us, and the following day we'd be back. And then the winter of 44, 45 is the coldest on record, and it was really, really, really difficult. And then obviously saw far too much that we should not have seen. Dead bodies and people being dragged out of their houses, never to come back. And then people, the northeastern part of Holland, the war was close to the German army. The Germans had been pushed over all the way to the northeast where we lived, and things got pretty serious there. We saw far too much that we shouldn't have, as I said earlier. Then academically, I was not a success story. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And, and then kids are hard on each other. Then at 12 and a half years old, they said, what are we going to do with this guy? He failed grade 7 for the 3rd time. And some people said, well, send him to the mentally challenged school. He said, no, we're not going to do that. So he said, let's make him, wood was part of our family, so let's make him a furniture maker. At 12 and a half years old, I went to the furniture factory and became a furniture maker. But the kids that I went to school with, that went to colleges and university, they didn't want to associate with us because I was just a laborer out of that today. But, so I had to start over new in my mind, to go to the land of my dreams, Canada, to have the dream, to prove to me that I could do it, to build my own lumber mill, and I wanted to start with nothing. And so I couldn't speak language, didn't know a soul, and I took the flight into Montreal and then the train across Canada, 4 days, 5 nights. Can you believe it? That's a long way. Ended up in Vancouver and went to the immigration department and couldn't speak English. And fortunately, there was a German fellow. I could speak some German. I told him what I wanted to do is build a lumber mill. He said, go to Prince George. That's 60 years ago. I'm still here in Prince George, and I can still see from here where the Greyhound station used to be. I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes. I counted my money at least 3 times. I had exactly $25.47. But what I did have, attitude, I've always been, even on the worst of circumstances, I've been positive. Passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%. Work ethic, I work harder, even still now at 85, than anybody. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And I'm still dreaming, and I'm still creative, if you wish. In terms of my companies, I do have a lumber mill. I have a number of other companies, and I'm always looking forward and saying, what else can I do even at 85? I'm into health and fitness. One of the last books that I wrote is this one, Living Young, Dying Old. There's a picture of me, actually. I'm also the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And the last book that I did, you can relate to this, is this one here, $1 Billion Creative, that's all about communication skills that are critical. It is also the bestseller on Amazon, #1 actually on Amazon, and it will come out in July. And so that became another part of my creative life as I'm doing, even at a late age, going to the gym, becoming an author at my mid-70s, really, and then starting in podcasting, and which is the new media, and it's changing the world. It's only at its infancy, and there, you and me, you in Sweden, me in Central British Columbia, here we're sitting having dialogue for an hour about all the issues around communication skills and all the areas about creativity, and so in the meantime, we have potentially, not bragging about it, but I have close to 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and which means on the other platforms, probably another million. We can have 2 million people watching us around the world. Immensely powerful.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? what is your insight around creativity based on your life?
My whole life has been being creative, having a vision as to where do I go from here and what can I do, to share with others that growing up in difficult circumstances and then starting over new again and saying basically everything is possible. And I'm a can do person, not a can't do. Everything is possible.
Mm. Mm.
That's my view of creativity. And I'm still doing that today, even in my mid 80s. I do that, on podcasting, but I also do that in business. I'm working on another book, but all writing about stuff. I'm a storyteller about things that have changed my life and maybe will become an inspiration for others, that no matter what the issues are and all the challenges that somebody has had, that even then still, at any age, everything you want to do are possible. You have to be a can-do attitude, passion, work ethic. What follows is
All right,
success.
let me ask you a follow-up question. How do you get or keep a can-do attitude?
Well, I fly around a lot because of my business, and obviously, but put it in perspective, where I grew up, things were difficult. Here, if I fly in an airplane and fly in North America, period, I look outside the window and I say, it's paradise. We are so fortunate and so lucky. Every day to me is a special day, even now. And all the challenges along the way is saying that I will stay the course. I'm a believer. I will not accept negative, because my life is all about positive. Every day is a good day.
Yeah. Now I think that's a very, very insightful comment there, because if you approach life as this is paradise, you will see the opportunities and you will see the possibilities. But if you say everything, if you focus on all the negative, then that's where you're going to be stuck. So I mean I think the key there is, because if you say have a can-do attitude, if you don't have it, you don't understand. But if you say wake up and say this is paradise, then it's easier to fall into the can-do mindset.
And then the other part important for me, Fredrik, is that, and I learned that in Holland and in Europe, is that give back to your community, become part of community, and then if you can, be an inspiration to others. And I do that. My books are not for making money so much, but rather than sharing the can-do challenges that I've gone through, and still are today, because I'm still very, very creative. I'm still looking forward, and to make that be in all the things that I do. I give it 125%.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very inspiring.
So where do you go from here? You keep as a presenter, you keep active. You moved back to Sweden, to your home area in particular. And Sweden is such an amazing country. So is that after being in Singapore for 17 years, 3 years in China, and now you're back in Sweden? So did that change direction for you? Creativity is still very much part of you, sharing that message. And as I understand it, you're working on another book. You have done, I believe you said, 16 or so?
11, yes.
11.
11.
And so you keep sharing with the world your views on creativity based on your own history. And
Based on the people I meet, I would say, yeah, based on the
others,
people
right?
I meet.
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter where I live. I mean, the world is round. So if I live in Singapore, if I live in Sweden, or if I live in China, I still travel as much as I did before, and then you get that global perspective. So it doesn't matter where. I'm actually living on an island in Sweden, so this is the island that you see here.
Yeah, yeah. So but it was quite a move. It must have been quite a move for you. Not a difficult one, but going back to Sweden. Although you were there back and forth a lot, probably because you did so much
No, I
traveling.
tell you, when I was studying, one of the chapters in the book is about Iceland, and the beautiful thing with the Icelandic language is that the Icelandic word for the world, I don't remember exactly how to say it, but that word that they use for the world has the word home in it. So
Yeah,
like it would be, they call their word for home is their word for world is home,
yeah,
meaning that we are, and if you have that mindset, you are at home anywhere you go, right? So I'm sorry to say it, but the moving countries for me has not been a big issue, because I feel at home wherever I go, and I feel at home in Sweden, but I also felt at home in Singapore, and I felt at home in China, or I used to live in America, wherever I have lived. And I think the mentality is that when you arrive to a place, you say to yourself, now, this is also home.
yeah,
Not this is my new home, this is also home. I am still at home. That mindset is the one I'm applying.
yeah. So then the one question is, how do you see the role of technology shaping, especially thinking podcasting as being one, possibly AI, obviously, artificial
Mm.
intelligence, how will it change creativity in the future, and what opportunities or challenges does it present with the changing of AI comes to mind, and the world is getting smaller and more interactive.
Uh, I'm an optimistic person. So I am optimistic about our use of technology. Right outside where I live, there's a factory, and they're building a ferry that is an elevated ferry. It's like one of those. It flies above the water. It just have a few fins underneath. It uses 80% less energy than the traditional ferries. It's a beautiful example of technology.
Yeah.
It's electric. It's faster. It doesn't have a wake. It's beautiful. So when we have technology, when we use creativity to create technology that makes our world much better, it's beautiful. And then sometimes, not sometimes we invent technology that makes our world worse, and that's unfortunate. And then we need to fix that too. And unfortunately, sometimes we create technology that is good, and then at the end it turns out we overuse it or something. And we need to fix that too. Overall, I would say we are happier now than we used to.
So if I look at you sitting here and behind you is so are you sitting on the mainland and you're on an island? How far is the island off the mainland, meaning Sweden?
It's you're seeing the mainland, so I'm 300 yards away from the mainland.
Oh yeah, so stone throw, right? Do you so
Yeah, it's
going
a
back
3 minute boat ride.
yeah, yeah, and then
Yeah.
also you noticed it right away. The this horse is from a friend of mine, Jan Eriksson Henderson, out of Sweden. Jan, my name actually was Jan, but everybody called me Hey John, how you doing? So there's John now. So, but in any event, this was made by you close to where you live, and
Yes,
it's very very much part of Sweden.
correct.
Yeah. Anyway, so the I just wanted to kind of share that with me with the people watching us from around the world. Fredrik, amazing conversation, amazing
Thank you.
podcast. Let's make sure we stay in touch. I'm gonna get you a book.
Next time you come to Sweden, you come visit me on my island.
I will do that. So let's make sure we stay in touch.
Absolutely. Great.
Thanks again, Fredrik. And for all those people watching us that or like this kind of podcast, in particular Sweden and Canada, and then Fredrik Haren and myself having a conversation about communication, subscribe to our podcast, share it with others, like it if you like it, give comments, so it will stimulate us to do more of these kinds and other podcasts. Again, Fredrik, a privilege. Take care. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you so much.